Good morning, Facebook. So good to be with you today. It's kind of a cold day here in Colorado, but the sun is shining, so that helps us a lot. I don't know how your weather is, but we have Him inside, and that gives us light and warmth, doesn't it? For every day. Now, today I want to talk to you about prosperity and giving. And so you say, is giving really an act of faith? Do we just need to do it? So I'm just going to share some personal things. Tithing existed before the law in the Old Testament. Tithing was established before the law, was affirmed by the law in the Old Testament, and by Jesus in the New Testament. And Genesis 14:20 says, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand, and He gave them a tithe of all. So we see tithing starts very early in the Bible. And so I began to tithe when I was very young because I sold apples. We lived on an apple farm, and my mother taught me that I should tithe. And Leviticus 27:30 through 32. Listen to me now. Don't hang up on me because you don't want to hear this. This is good for you, okay? And on the tithe of the land, whether of the seed of the land or the fruit of the tree, is the Lord's. So there's a certain amount that belongs to God. It is holy to the Lord. And concerning the tithe of the herd or the flock or whatever passes under the rod, the 10th one shall be holy to the Lord. So I'm not just making this up as I go, but I'm going to share very personally how this works. Because I started tithing very early. I started tithing probably when I was 12 or 14, someplace in there, and I began to give 10% at church. I would come, with my tithe when I came to church. And so I think when you read this, you think, oh, well, that's terrible. Why would I want to take 10% of what I make and give it to the church? But I think, again, I'm going to read Matthew 23:22. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, those are spices basically, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. These you ought to have done without leaving the undone. So people say, well, I'm merciful to people, but I don't believe in tithing. Well, you can be merciful to people and believe in tithing, and God will prosper you. So I began to tithe on my apple sales, and God began to do unusual things in my life. So I really grew up tithing. So that was a big thing for me. And I still do it. I love it. And I'm a lot older than you are. I won't tell you how much older I am than you are today, but you've heard me tell it before. And remember, you say, well, I want to do it. Well, you can send your prayer request to do it to MarilynandSarah.org. Did you get it? We like to have your prayer requests. But we want to prosper, but we don't sow in order to reap. So put your hand on your heart. Say, I need to sow if I want to reap. This is very important. And I looked, Abraham gave a tithe to Melchizedek, the priest of the Lord. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, was priest of God Most High, and he blessed Abram, saying, Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. Then Abram gave him a tithe, or a tenth, of everything. So you say, well, should you take tithe on the gross or take, your income tax out first? Well, how big a blessing do you want? So I bless on what I want to be blessed on. And then Genesis, some of these are so unusual. I hope you're listening. Genesis 28:22, and this stone which I have set as a pillar shall be God's house, and of all that you give me I will surely give a tithe to you. So Jacob tithed. So we see some very wise people in Old Testament tithing. And then Paul, this gets into New Testament, encouraged believers to commit to give and to determine ahead of time what they would give for a special offering. So you say, well, I want to do the 10%, but I'd also like to do a special offering. So they would pray about it and ask God what they should do. So 1 Corinthians 16:2 says, on the first day of the week, let each one of you lay something aside, storing up as he may prosper, that there be no collections when I come. So he says, when you first get your salary, put it aside. Put God first. So put your hand on your heart again and say, I want to put God first. Now, I started this very young, and I'm now very old. I'm still doing it. I still tithe. In Acts 10, even unbelievers committed to give. Cornelius, imagine an unbeliever, a Roman centurion, gave generously. And so, why? Because they knew they would be blessed. So you say, I don't know why I'm not blessed. Well, do you tithe? Do you give? Don't expect something for what you don't sow. If you don't sow, honey, you don't reap. And there was I'm reading from Acts 10:1-2. There was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of what was called the Italian regiment, a devout man, and one who feared God with all his household, who gave alms generously to the people and prayed to God always. And so, how would you like to have your name in the Bible? That would be pretty wonderful. And what put it there? Tithing. So I started tithing early, and I'm old. I'm still tithing. I believe in it, and I love it. And I know how it blesses you. So listen to this. 2 Corinthians 9:8. God is able to make all grace abound toward you. So being prosperous is a special grace. I want to be prosperous all my life because I want this special grace to sow. So you're not going to have a special grace to sow if you don't tithe. You say, well, where should my tithe go? It should go to the church where you go. Where are you fed? Where you're fed is where you should sow. So that's the way you make the decision. And Abraham, oh my goodness, prospered greatly so much so that he and his nephew Lot had to go their separate ways because of his great wealth. Why? Oh, he prospered. And I take it that Lot prospered too, that they both were tithers. And Genesis, are you listening to me? You say, well, I don't want to hear about money. Well, you need to. You have to live with it all your life. I'm older than you. I'm in my 90s. I still have to hear about money because I still have to pay bills, right? And I still like to give. Abram was very rich in livestock, in silver and in gold. And I look at this and I think, wow, he prospered. But he was a tither. And then Jacob prospered more than Laban. And that's quite a story. You want to read Genesis 30, verse 43. Thus the man became exceedingly prosperous. Would you like to be exceedingly prosperous? Folks, I think I am exceedingly prosperous because I want to reach the world with the gospel. So I have a purpose. It's not just to have a big house, not to have 10 new cars. And so he became very prosperous. He had large flocks, female, male servants, camels, and donkeys. So wherever I read in the Bible people tithing, I see prosperity. And so I'm going to say wherever I have been in my lifestyle, I have had prosperity. Why? Because I tithe. And where do you tithe? You tithe to a local church. You say, I'm not in one. Well, get in one. And send your prayer request to MarilynandSarah.org. And so, folks, let's know that God didn't make all the money for the thugs. I think we're supposed to prosper. And, it says, whosoever shall speak to the mountain, he gets what's on the other side. If you don't do what the Bible says, don't expect it. But if you do, thank God and keep expecting and don't give up. And God bless you. I love this time to be with you. Keep in touch with us. We like to pray for you.